Eric Galko, Optimum Scouting with us on 365 Sports. Eric, we tried it. My goodness, I think I waved at you or you waved at me. We never could actually get time together in Vegas around Radio Row, but we appreciate your time now. So the Big 12 is thought of with the SEC and the Big 10 and what they're doing. The ACC with some alpha names like Clemson, Florida State, Miami, and others. How much or how many like juicy prospects do you see within the Big 12?
Oh, I think a lot. I think good to talk to you guys. Well, sorry I missed you at the Big 12 Pro Day. I think the additions of schools like Colorado and some of the Pac-12 schools that came over absolutely have a lot of talent. Arizona's got a ton of guys this year. Colorado certainly has 2 stars in Shadur and Travis, among others as well too. So I really think that on a team-by-team basis, every team in the Big 12 has probably at least 3 or 4 and upwards of 7, 8, 9 players that are NFL consideration too. One of the deepest in all of the country.
Eric, I know running back is not, the sexy draft position anymore, but overall, this is a pretty good year coming up for running backs. And the Big 12 has 5 or 6 guys that look like they might be NFL backs. Am I wrong about that?
Definitely not wrong. I mean, I think the one guy that NFL teams are probably most curious about for his NFL projection, just because he was so productive last year, was Taj Brooks. And I think a year ago he thought about coming out for the draft, not necessarily high-end grades, but NFL teams, guys that produce at that level and have third down ability like he does for 2 years in a row, get NFL teams really excited. And we've seen guys that go back from the years. Zach Charbonnet comes to mind at UCLA and Michigan, who was productive over the course of time, and not a guy who's an elite pass catcher or pass blocker, but just a really good football player. And Taj Brooks has that potential as well too. But no doubt the Big Ten, Ollie Gordon leads the way, obviously, and among others, Ollie's one of the first running backs taken. It's overall a deep group at that conference.
I saw on your timeline here recently, Eric, you highlighted Garrett Greene a little bit or retweeted a little bit about Garrett Greene and West Virginia team coming back with a lot. Not necessarily have huge expectations nationally, but I know there in Morgantown they feel great, especially because of Garrett Greene. What do you think of him as a player and as a prospect?
No doubt. And I'll say West Virginia, talking to a good number of area scouts on the road, going through programs in the East Coast, pretty common theme saying, watch out for West Virginia this year. I think they're a really well-coached football team with Coach Neil Brown, but with the offensive line that's strong, defensive line that's deep, a couple of good transfers, and then you've got a guy like Garrett Greene who can make plays inside and outside the pocket. He's a really good athlete. Some teams in the NFL like him at quarterback. A lot of teams really intrigued about him as a receiver. That's the kind of athlete we're talking about. But I think at West Virginia, again, talking to scouts that bet that program, they said if they win 9, 10 games this year, people aren't going to be surprised. And that team is really dark horse in the Big 12. And Garrett Greene, whether it's NFL prospects or at quarterback or elsewhere, is going to be one of the better quarterbacks in the conference this year.
Eric Galko now also, when we first met him, he was a part of Optimum Scouting, which he still is, but also the director of football ops player personnel when it comes to the Shrine Bowl every year. Eric, let me ask you this about the quarterbacks who are now, for example, let's go to the Big 12. We brought up the quarterbacks. Shadur Sanders, your thoughts? There's so much discussion about him. Where do you put him?
Incredibly talented. I got a chance to see Shadur back in 2020 when he was a true freshman at Jackson State. And he is a guy within 5 or 6 throws, you know how special that guy can be. And he's grown so much as a passer. I think there's a lot of room to get better and continue to get better too. But no doubt in my mind, Shadur has a chance not only to be a first round pick, but one of the first players overall in next year's draft class. And that offensive line's gotten better at Colorado. He's got some more receivers, guys like Will Shepard, Francis Vanderbilt, Jimmy Horn is there, obviously Travis Hunter at receiver. I think if that offensive line can protect Shadur, he could put up 4,000 yards in college this year. He's got that type of mobility, arm talent, and NFL level play. And that's why guys like Tom Brady, who have worked with Shadur, have said publicly how special this guy can be.
So this is not just the hype. He's good. He's obviously put up huge numbers at Jackson State and also Colorado. That he is, not just because he's Deion's son, that this kid, young man, is really that kind of player.
Yep. If he was Shadur Jones, he'd also be a first-round level player. He's a heck of a player. I think it's similar a little bit. They're different people, but it's similar to Caleb Williams in terms of some of the off-field character stuff where – hey, he's a bigger personality. He's a very confident person. And it's easy when you don't talk to him. And sometimes you see what you read on social media or wherever to think he's one thing, but he's an incredibly intelligent, And he has a benefit, like a lot of guys that talk about Steph Curry all the time. His dad played professional football. He had a chance to see and talk to someone every day who's been through it and had success. And whether that's a personality thing or not, that experience alone is so valuable when he goes through the draft process. So I think what you think of Shadur on social media or whatever else in the media is one thing. I can tell you people around him and know how he's built. And me seeing him up close since he was a freshman at Jackson State, I know the kind of person and player he could be, and that's a franchise quarterback level talent.
Offensive line-wise, how is this conference set up this year?
Wyatt Milliam at West Virginia, mentioned the program again. He'll be one of the first offensive tackles drafted in this year's draft class. He'll be a first, second-round pick. He's that level of talent. Jonah at Arizona, another good player as well, too. But it's a really deep group. I think the offensive lines across the Big 12, Baylor got some guys coming in, Clark Barrington being one of them. Campbell Barrington being one of them as well, to kind of be there for 2 years now and a better offensive line group. But it feels like a lot of Big 12 teams bolstered and really developed their offensive line in a strong way. Caleb Rogers at Texas Tech, that'll be a great offensive line room as well, too. So across the board, a strong group, but Wyatt Milliam of West Virginia takes the cake as a possible first-round guy if he has a great season.
Eric, would you say that's one of the areas where that league has been a bit deficient in a way, just overall, that it amplifies other prospects, and maybe that's been not has it been more of a weakness than a strength perhaps in recent years for the Big 12?
No doubt. It's absolutely the case. And looking through some of the guys we have graded well in the Big 12 at offensive tackle alone, transfer from Princeton, Jalen Travis at Iowa State now, and a transfer from a smaller school, Dalton Cooper at Oklahoma State. So I think that the transfer portal has allowed these teams, which historically, the Kansas States, even the Baylors and Texas programs have done a good job having depth at those spots, but having the NFL level talent has been lacking, to your point. And I think a mix of further development, the influx of some of the Pac-12 schools, and now the transfer portal, finding those smaller school guys or guys who haven't developed elsewhere, really benefited the Big 12 in a big way.
So one of the other dynamic combinations entering the league this year from the Pac-12 is Noah Fafita and Teteroa McMillan from Arizona. I know they've got some other talented players in that roster, but those guys are kind of the headliners there. Eric, what are your thoughts on both players and what type of prospects in terms of the NFL draft are we talking about here?
Yeah, Noah, we've got another year left, most likely. He's a redshirt sophomore, and I would imagine, barring a Heisman-level campaign, which I'm not saying is going to happen, but his talent's not out of the question with that team. But I think they've got another year left at Arizona as well, too. But no doubt Arizona is a school that a lot of general managers and high-level NFL personnel are going to go to in season because of how much talent and first-round guys they have. McMillan, the receiver, is going to be one of the first receivers drafted in this year's class. And, again, a good season can make him a top 10, top 15 pick. They've got talent on the offensive line. They've got two NFL defensive backs, Takario Davis and Traden Stukes. So this Arizona team has quickly kind of changed their dynamic with the new coaching staff. And I think that's a good chance to be one of, in my opinion, if they can stay healthy and they have enough depth behind them, they can be one of the best teams in the Big 12 this year.
The quarterback position around the country, because the Big 12, they have a chunk of 6 or 7 that we've mentioned, and you've mentioned most of them. I don't know if we brought up Jalen Daniels among a couple of others, but the quarterback position, when you look at Carson Beck, Quinn Ewers, and Dylan Gabriel, how would you position them turning when and if they turn pro?
Dylan Gabriel is a heck of a quarterback, and I know he's leaving the Big 12 now. Now he's going to Oregon, but I think he's a guy that people have maybe glossed over how talented he is. I was speaking with an NFL team just earlier today about Dylan Gabriel being, hey, let's not forget about him as being an NFL quarterback, despite maybe his size and whatever. He's a heck of a guy as well. And Quinn Ewers has a chance to be a first-round pick. But you mentioned the Big 12. There's a lot of up-and-coming players at quarterback in the Big 12 that can easily, I think, replace, maybe supplant some of those guys as well. Donovan Smith at Houston, for example, this year, next year's draft, he's got all the first-round potential. And if you guys got a chance to speak with him, a very impressive young man as well, too, who's going to impress teams in the interview room. Avery Johnson at Kansas State, he's got first-round potential when the time comes as well. Rocco Becht at Iowa State, first-round potential when that time comes as well, too. So despite losing some of those teams with top-level quarterbacks, combined with Shadur Sanders and Garrett Greene, a great college quarterback, they've got a lot of young up-and-coming quarterbacks still in the Big 12 this year.
That's good to know, yeah.
Eric, you mentioned Jalen Daniels. Where does Jalen Daniels kind of fall in the mind right now, given his injury history, but also given the flashes of talent that we've seen? How much have you watched of him, and where do you kind of peg him?
Who was that again? I'm sorry.
Jalen Daniels, quarterback at Kansas.
Yeah, just it's incredible what Jalen Daniels and Devin Neal have meant to that Kansas program, and how much, combined with the great coaching staff, obviously doing a great program tradition. Those guys have NFL potential. Devin, obviously, a little more of an obvious running back, big play guy, and can do 3-down stuff as well too. But Jalen Daniels' growth over the last 9 to 12 months as a passer, as a pocket passer, if he can stay healthy, he's got so much NFL potential on top of the two. And I think Kansas is a program that they're going to win close games. They're not going to lose games they shouldn't. And I think for a guy like Jalen Daniels to be a mobile, dual-threat guy, he's got to win games and show he could be a game manager as well as a playmaker. But no doubt he's on NFL teams' radars. And, again, a little bit limited in some areas and has to make some big strides. But a big personality, a confident person. And I think the number one thing that when you talk to the Kansas coaching staff, they talk every day about how much of a program builder he is and what a high-character leader and the player development level quarterback that you find in the country. I think the NFL teams would love to have a guy like Jalen Daniels in their quarterback room. And it's a similar discussion to a guy like Brock Purdy a couple of years ago. You can say what you want about Brock Purdy's film, but people went through Iowa State knew that he made everybody in that room on and off the field better. And that's what Jalen Daniels has as well.
Who is your favorite player to watch so far in college football, like going into this year, the one that you're excited to break down the film on every time you get the chance?
In the Big 12 or the whole country?
Whole country.
I'll say Cameron Ward at Miami, Florida. I had a chance to visit with the program and the staff and to see kind of the culture he's infused in a Miami team that's immensely talented, but also needed a new identity at quarterback. Cameron Ward has a chance to be a Baker Mayfield level impact at Miami this year. And I don't say that lightly. The culture he's created there and the leadership he's brought and the talent that they have, if Miami is a team that's one of the top 5, 6 in the country, and he's a big part of that, I won't be surprised at all. So if you're a college football fan, that Miami versus Florida week 1 game is going to be a big one, but Miami should be a team that I think might win the ACC and can end up being one of the best teams in the country this year because of a guy like him.
Eric, there used to be, maybe not always, but when a player bounced around back in the day, prior to the rules of now, when it's like, I don't know how to say it, it's wide open. When a player like Dylan Gabriel, UCF, Oklahoma, now Oregon, Cam Ward, Incarnate Word, and then Washington State, now Miami, does that matter at all anymore because of the new rules? Does that maybe turn off any team, or is it purely what the hell their talent is?
100%. And I think the way it can turn off teams is based off of how the last team talks about you as a player. You know, use Cam Ward, for example. If you speak to Washington State or Incarnate Word people who are there, they speak incredibly highly of Cam and appreciate and understand the decision-making process. Other players that bounce around, it's not so positive. So I think the transfer portal has created, and NIL has given NFL teams insight into who's mature and who's not. I think it's a huge benefit to NFL teams to ask those questions. I certainly do, and you can tell pretty quickly which players are making smart decisions or thoughtful decisions or football-focused or personal life decisions, and which guys are saying, where can I get the most money, or where makes sense on paper, or where's my buddy going? And I think it's given NFL teams a lot of really information on these players as well, too. So for guys out there transferring a whole bunch, make sure that the reason you're transferring makes sense if you want to go to the NFL, because NFL teams are asking those questions, and it can be a positive for guys like Cam who are thoughtful, and when they leave a place, it's never on bad terms, and guys on the other side of the coin, too, may be transferring for the wrong reasons. NFL teams are asking those questions and very thankful they know who those players are.
When you reach out to a player and offer them an invite to your bowl game, your all-star game, the Shrine Bowl, what's the reaction for them?
It's been awesome. You know, I would say that for, you know, back in the 90s, Tom Brady played in the Shrine Bowl, and Dan Marino and John Elway. And I think for part of the early 2000s, the Shrine Bowl a little bit lost its luster for maybe some deserved reasons that the game wasn't the same level it should be. And I think over the last 3 years, I've taken great pride in bringing back that history, but also giving players that come to our event, as well as NFL clubs and agents, a best-in-class experience. And I think from my point of view, hearing from players in college now that say, my teammate went to the Shrine Bowl and loved it and felt healthy and enjoyed the process, and my other teammate went to a different all-star game and didn't. So for me, it's gone from a what's the Shrine Bowl all about to thanks, great to hear from you. I'd love to talk about the Shrine Bowl and come in there this year as well, too. So it's been rewarding to take care of players and have that feedback. But no doubt, the Shrine Bowl and all All-Star games are a chance for players to think about the NFL. And I view our All-Star game as a gateway to their NFL future. It's a really cool, unique area from a media content standpoint to talk to guys who are not college athletes anymore, but also not pros. It's a great doorway for these guys to look at what their NFL life may be.
Well, we'll come up and do the show there since it's
Let's do it.
90 miles away.
We'll figure all that out technically and all that. But, Eric, that'll be wonderful. We want to help you and support you as much as we can, too. You're the best. Thanks for your time. We appreciate it.
Means a lot, guys. Appreciate it. We'll talk to you guys soon.
Eric Galko, Shrine Bowl, football ops, and we'll have him on a handful of times throughout the season. Appreciate it. Well, great thoughts about some of the talent in quarterback and more in the Big 12.
Yeah, I think the Big 12 has suffered, from just a deficiency draft-wise for a few years now, and in particular at spots like the O-line, and I think defensively. That's not the case this year. I think with Shadur and Travis Hunter and some of the Arizona guys. Now, granted, like you said, Noah Fafita most likely would come back for a redshirt junior year, but you never know. If he sets the world on fire, they win the Big 12 or whatever. But, the Cats have guys on defense as well, Manu Tacario-Davis. There's a lot of players I'm probably forgetting about because of the transfer portal that I haven't even thought about that are draft prospects, not necessarily first, second rounders that are obvious, but the later rounds that could add to the overall stockpile of draft picks that you have. Like, naturally, you should have more because you've added more teams, but I think the total's been kind of low in general, and I think that maybe with the influx of quarterbacks and some of these newer teams that you're looking at a year where, from a Big 12 perspective, actually could be pretty damn interesting in the NFL draft, and beyond just your typical interest levels, like guys actually making some noise near the top end of the draft, which hasn't necessarily been the case. Oklahoma kind of carried the water there for a while with the big quarterbacks at the top of the draft. That's cleared out a bit now and wasn't so much the case, but they still regularly, along with Texas, put a lot of guys, in the draft. Now, there were years where, like, Texas didn't, a year where they put nobody in there, as a matter of fact, but that started to turn towards the end, and regardless of whether Texas was on a heater or Oklahoma was doing kind of their usual 6 guys get in the draft every year, you're losing probably like 10 draft picks on average with those two schools leaving. Mm-hmm. And so you need to replace that somehow. You don't have to have everything be a conference bragging rights race, because I think that's become like kind of like that's gone overboard in a way because of realignment. All this conference pride just gets a little bit silly when we're doing like every single little category. But I do think NFL draft picks is important when it comes to recruiting and important when it comes
I think it's huge.
Reasons to watch the games. It's like Shadur Sanders makes me want to watch Colorado even if I have no attachment to Colorado, right? So having Fafita and McMillan and Sanders and Hunter and Avery Johnson down the pipeline. We didn't even mention Cam Rising. There's tons of others that we didn't get to because you got 16 teams, but I think it's a good year for the league. KJ Jefferson, yeah. I mean, we didn't touch on UCF at all, and they probably will have a handful of guys that'll be in play. So, I actually think it's a pretty good year, an interesting year as far as the NFL draft and this conference goes.